Welcome to those who have joined us for our session, Become an Accredited Teacher. I'm Dylan Ferguson, a Macquarie Student Ambassador. We have an interesting session planned for you, and I'm pleased to welcome our three speakers. Dr. Janet Dutton, our Course Director for the Master of Teaching, Primary and Secondary. Antonio Tarquinio, Final Year Master of Teaching, Secondary student. And Imogen Palmer, Final Year Master of Teaching, Primary student. Our speakers will share their expert insights into the primary and secondary teaching fields and their personal journeys and experiences. If you're interested in becoming an early childhood teacher and have specific questions in this area, please post via the Q&A function. We'll pass on your questions to Dr. Sarah Powell, our Course Director for the Master of Teaching, Birth to 5 Years, and email the answers to you later. Let's start our panel discussion with the first question for Janet. So Janet, can you share with us the roadmap to becoming an accredited primary or secondary teacher and what students can expect from our Master of Teaching degrees?
Thank you, Dylan. Obviously, if you're listening to us today, you've started to think about whether you'd like to be a teacher, and both Imogen and Antonio and myself as teachers would endorse that decision. And I think that you'll find from what we're going to talk to you today about some of the reasons why we think it's wonderful to be a teacher. We love the fact that we can make a difference. We really enjoy the challenge that teaching brings us. And we know it's one way that we can really express our creativity and show our love of subjects, as well as being part of a career which is a really stable and future-proof career. We'll always need teachers. And I think in the current setting, we've become aware of that. So to become a teacher at Macquarie University, the Master of Teaching degree that we offer, both in primary and in secondary, they're 2-year master's degrees. You need an undergraduate degree in order to be accepted into these courses. But within that, there is flexibility. So there'll be options for you to fast track that degree. And there's also options for you to do that degree a little more slowly if your work and your family circumstances would like a slower pathway in a part-time attendance. So in terms of your roadmap, if you join our degree full-time, either primary or secondary, you'd be looking to attend 2 to 3 days a week. Now that can be in on-campus attendance options, or there's other offerings which involve the more infrequent attendance mode. So there's real flexibility, and I'm sure that Antonio and Imogen can speak to those options when they speak to you. And what we have in our course is we have a really, we think, engaging, positive entry to the teaching profession. We have a course which is very carefully structured to move you through the aspects of education that you need in order to be classroom ready. And we have you in the classroom early in your degree. So in first session, you'll be doing a 3-week professional experience block where you'll really get to see what happens in the classroom. And I can see Imogen and Antonio smiling there. I'm sure they'll have some experiences to tell you about the wonderful experiences they've had on placement. So there's a number of units you'll be studying. Some of those units are common to the primary and the secondary degree. Some of them are very, very specific. But all of those units are very carefully tailored to introduce the material in time for you to think about it, reflect on it, and then become more confident in it as you move into the classroom. We operate here at Macquarie, we have the 5 R's, we call the 5 R's. That is, we look to really develop your resilience as a teacher. We look to help you to become a reflexive teacher where you think about your practice. We want you to be able to be responsive. So we have many units where we're looking to help you to cater to your students and their needs. We want you to be ready to learn, and that's our 4th R. And then our 5th R is our research engaged. And that's something we feel is really important, being able to know what is the current research-informed ways of doing it. And when you negotiate your way through our degree, we know you'll do it in a very collegial and collaborative way. We work very hard, particularly in our first session, to get you connected, so you come to know people, you get to know your academics and tutors that you're working with. And we support you the whole way across the 2 years of the degree. And then at the end of the degree, you will be accredited. And by that, we mean you meet the requirements from the New South Wales Educational Standards Authority, or NESA, And that means that you are able to be accredited as a teacher in New South Wales, recognised in other states in Australia, and in many, many other international jurisdictions. So in a nutshell, that's the pathway to the Master of Teaching, Primary and Secondary. I look forward to, we can hear some of the other views from Antonio and Imogen about the degree. Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you, Janet, for that really helpful insight into exactly what the Master of Teaching degrees look like. And of course, for more information on those entry requirements, the course structure and how to apply, you can always visit our website at courses.mq.edu.au. Now, I'm sure our viewers are also really curious about what inspired Antonio and Imogen to pursue teaching as a career and about their student and placement experiences. So Imogen, I'll start with you. If you could speak a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Dylan. So I actually have a zookeeping background. I was a zookeeper for about 5 years. And while I was finishing I did a science undergrad degree. While I was finishing that, I did work in early childhood education for about 3 years, which I absolutely loved. And of course, the zookeeping I absolutely loved. But I also loved the education side of zookeeping with all the keeper talks. We have school groups, we had tour groups, and a big part of conservation in zoos is through education. And I've really, really enjoyed that. So I wanted to sort of develop that further. So that's when I decided to do the Master of Teaching at Macquarie. As much as I miss all the animals, I am really glad I made the decision to do the degree. It's something I'll never regret. And I've just had such a wonderful experience. The beauty of postgrad, I think you have smaller cohorts, definitely compared to a science undergrad degree. The cohort was huge. But the MTeach, we have really small cohorts. So you really get to know, of course, your cohort, but your lecturers and your tutors as well, which I really valued because they just have so much experience and knowledge that you can just take from, and they really care about creating good teachers, and you really feel that, and they are really approachable, and I just really enjoyed that. I'm like that annoying mature age student that has a million questions to ask, but I think that was really that's helped me a lot because it has meant that I can learn so much. So I've really enjoyed that. Obviously, COVID threw a spanner in the works for everyone, not just those studying a uni degree. But it did mean that a lot of the course, even though I was an on-campus student, a lot of it has obviously been off campus. But last semester we were back on campus, which was so nice to just, because even though we were all online last year, we'd formed really nice bonds and relationships with our cohorts, and you do really lean on each other a lot. So it was nice to finally come back and see everyone, and you know, debrief about assignments, which you couldn't organically do that over Zoom really. So it was really nice to drive in. You got to go into the postgrad section of the library, which felt very VIP. But it was really nice to be able to do that. And of course, COVID also impacted pracs. So last year, my 2 pracs were at the same school, which actually turned out to be awesome because my first prac was year 5 and my second prac was kindergarten. And when I went back a few months later for my second prac, the year 5s would be calling across the playground, "Hi, Miss Palmer," like so excited. So it was such a nice environment to go back into. Even the quiet student that I thought I'd struggled to bond with was excited to see me and calling out to me. And then I'd have my a group of girls come to my kindy classroom every morning asking if they can help me do anything, and I'd be like, I've just printed stuff to I don't know where, can you go and look at all the printers and find my printing? So it was so nice to be able to go back there. And that's probably been my favorite part of the degree, is the pracs and the relationships that you build with the students, because that has such an impact on your teaching and your classroom management. And it's just such a nice thing. Like my most recent prac was of course all online, except for a couple of days. But I was sort of like, how am I going to form these relationships with the students when I'm seeing them for half an hour a day on Zoom? And it got to one of my second last lessons, and I was on year 1, and this little girl put up her hand on Zoom and she was like, I just really need to say something. I'm really not happy that it's Miss Palmer's last day tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God, keep it together, don't cry. Like it's just such an amazing experience, the impact that you can have on these little people's lives. And so I've just had such a wonderful experience with placement, especially, and also throughout the degree. I've also made some lifelong friends. So it's been a very fun learning experience.
Imogen, that's so great to hear, and especially considering sort of the challenges that COVID's brought up and the things so beyond our control. The fact that you've still had those really awesome experiences is very, very special. So that's really, really great to hear. Antonio, coming from a secondary school teaching background in the course of your studies, I'll ask you some of your experiences so far.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dylan. So essentially the reason why I wanted to pursue a career in teaching is because I wanted a job that made a difference and could help students unlock the potential and essentially find out what they want to do with their lives and help them achieve those goals. So to give you some context, I come from a science background. I'm going in to be a science teacher, specifically a physics teacher. And I really love science because it allows you to understand how the universe works and why things happen and why things are the way they are. And I love sharing that with people. So I thought doing a degree that can allow me to become a teacher where I can go to schools and I can teach all about biology, chemistry, physics, astrophysics, all these ideas is the reason why I wanted to become a teacher. So it's really cool. It's really exciting. Throughout the master's degree, there have been some challenges, there have been some amazing moments, and it's been a wonderful experience so far. So I would say the best thing, in my opinion, I think Imogen said the same thing, is the placements. The placements is where you get to gather all the information that you've learned from your lecturers and from your tutors, which is vast and abundant and really informative. And you get to apply it to an actual context with school students. So you're able to go into a school and try new things. So for an example, on my most recent placement, which was my final placement, which was a 6-week course back in April to June, I was at a school and I had a class that had some management issues. And one of the things that I learned was how to manage students, specifically with classroom program, with seating plans. Sorry about that. So I was never a big fan of seating plans, but I thought, okay, let's try and implement it. And so I implemented it and it actually worked quite well, which I was quite positive about. So the things that you learn from your placement, that's just one example, but everything you learn from how to develop effective lessons, how to create effective resources, all the things that you learn in this course, you get to combine into your placements and then proceed from there. So overall, it's been a really incredible experience thus far. Thank you, Dylan.
That's awesome. Thank you, Antonio. And it's really great to hear that you've both had really positive experiences and really experienced quite unique and different things within your placements and within your teaching studies. So Janet, maybe you'd like to touch on the diversity of experience available to our students as they go about their studies.
Absolutely, Dylan. And so both you can see from the stories that Antonio and Imogen have told that the professional experience, which is the practicum, is a key component. And what we do is we make sure that's integrated into the learning we do at university. So I know that there's a lot of talk about, what you do at university isn't as important as what you do on prac. But what both Antonio and Imogen have explained is that they're integrated, they're related, and that what we do is we create a situation where the units that we ask you to study and the information and some of it's theoretical and it's research-based and some of it's very practical. We ask you to think about school scenarios and real life situations in our tutorials and in our lectures, and we use examples from schools. All of us who are working with you in the Master of Teaching are school connected. We're researching and very, very involved in schools. So we're not disconnected from schools, even though we're at university, and we consider ourselves very much teachers, so that the learning that you do at university is relevant to the learning that you do at school. So it's a very connected experience. And what we do try to do is make sure that from the examples we use in class, the case studies we might run, we try to show our students a range of different types of schools. And we ask our students to do a placement in at least 2 schools so that the students can see different schools. We don't want to train up our teachers to be only able to work in one particular type of school. We want our teachers that leave the Master of Teaching to be nimble and able to tailor their teaching for a whole range of different students, the students that love learning, the students that are disconnected, the students who come from a non-English speaking background, the students who have particular learning needs that really require different types of expertise. And the idea that we prepare our students to differentiate is very important, that idea that we help you to know what it is your students need so that you can make the learning experiences really positive for them. And I'm sure that Antonio and Imogen could tell you examples of where they've watched a student, perhaps at the end of the degree in the final placement, all of the students do a teaching performance assessment whereby they monitor some students' progress, and that would be an example of when we see students who we can't do something and then we find a way to really tailor the learning, and that generally speaking we see some really positive gains either in engagement or in their learning. Imogen or Antonio, did either of you want to speak?
Yeah, can I add something with that? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Janet. Absolutely. Yeah, so there is something called the Teaching Performance Assessment, which we complete in our final placements, which is essentially an overview of have you demonstrated that you've effectively been able to teach students? And we focus in the Macquarie TPA, we focus on 3 specific students. I won't go into too many details, but essentially one of the students that I was looking at, this student was living with, I can't remember what this student was living with, but she was very quiet and very shy, and she had high depression, high anxiety. So to teach that student was very difficult, especially in a science setting, because a lot of the science involved a lot of practicums and a lot of experiments, and this student didn't really want to participate in any of those items. So the thing that I managed to do was I managed to utilize the skills that I'd learned to talk and communicate with this student and see what she liked, what she didn't like. I talked with the other teachers at my school to be able to communicate with them and find out what they know about this student, what she enjoys, what she doesn't enjoy. And essentially, by the time that I'd finished evaluating this student, she'd become a lot more proactive in engaging with her classmates and enjoying science, because I found that she actually really enjoyed science. She was just a bit nervous to apply what she learned. So speaking to her, giving her tools and tasks that can allow her to feel more confident with herself and express what she knows in a supportive and safe environment allowed her to come out and really enjoy it. So that was something that I found with the TPA, which, to be honest, I was very proud of, but I was more delighted for her that she was able to come out and express herself as well.
Great.
Thank you so much for that, Antonio, and also for your answer, Janet. Something I'd like to touch on now is sort of looking at those amazing experiences you've had so far, Antonio and Imogen. I'd love to know what sort of the next steps are, or what you're looking for or looking forward to now towards the end of your studies. So Imogen, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Dylan. I think I'd actually really like to do casual work for a while. Like Janet was saying before about learning about different schools. Obviously, as I said earlier, I only got to go to I went to the same school for my 2 pracs last year due to COVID, and then this year's prac was online predominantly, still a different school, but you just learn so much being in a different school environment, being in a different suburb. Everything is so, even school to school within the same suburb, everything is so different. So I'd actually really like to learn a lot more and be a casual for a while, to be able to learn as much as possible. You also get to meet so many different teachers that have so much experience and have worked in different places and done different things. And I just think there's so much knowledge out there that, yes, we learn so much within the degree, but I also think there's just so much more to learn from teachers and from being out in schools. So I'd really like to develop my knowledge further.
That's really cool. Thank you for that, Imogen. Antonia, can I ask you the same question about your next steps?
Absolutely. So if Imogen is if you're taking it slow, I'm jumping into the deep end. I've just been granted a permanent position at a school to teach physics for next year. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll start full-time next year. I have also been accredited, so I can start casual teaching at the moment. So in my final placement, which was back in April, June, as I mentioned, I applied to become a casual teacher, so accredit myself with NESA, and was successful in that. And so now I've started teaching at a school doing casual work, which is quite limited at the moment because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but overall it's pretty good. But essentially I will continue that this year and then start my full-time job next year, which I'm looking forward to as an accredited teacher.
Thank you, Antonio. And again, I think that's a really good example of the diversity of opportunities that are available to graduates and students approaching the end of their master's degrees in teaching. So Janet, maybe you'd like to expand on that a little bit more.
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, so Antonio mentioned that you can get conditional accreditation. So the pathways to the teaching, everyone always says, well, when can I start teaching? So everybody can start teaching at the moment when they've completed 50% of their Master of Teaching. So for most students, that's in the second year if they're full-time, although some students do some accelerated learning, and that may happen a bit earlier. And so you can teach then in schools as an accredited teacher. You don't have to have finished your degree. You can be in the classroom teaching normal classes, not supervised, in your final year. And when schools are normal, there's a lot of casual teaching available. So you can work in your area. If you're prepared to move a little bit beyond, perhaps into some schools that are hard as the staff, there's always plenty of work. And one of the things that is fabulous is that all of those experiences stand you in great stead when you actually do get your full-time job. As Imogen mentioned, a lot of people start work in casual capacity, but number of teachers, and Antonio is working in an area of great demand, which is science. So where there is shortages in mathematics and in science and the STEM areas. So if that's your area, you are well placed for a job. But similarly, there's shortages in primary. I hear lots of primary schools are very keen to source teaching. What I do know is that our Master of Teaching graduates are highly sought after. We have schools who we're in constant contact with schools asking us for MTeach students who might be interested in roles in their schools. So there's a lot of support to make that transition. And as I say, we're highly respected in the area, and our Masters of Teaching students are highly sought after graduates working in schools. There's, in terms of what maybe might be future trends, there's been a lot of talk in the press about accelerated pathways into teaching. The Master of Teaching there's lots of work being done to look at that. It's particularly for people who have industry experience, such as if you've been an academic working in a university and are looking to transition into, say, for example, secondary or primary teaching, there will be accelerated options for people such as you or people with relevant industry experience, particularly in the science, mathematics, STEM areas. So it's a watch this space. There'll be a number of initiatives announced in that space. So the journey to teaching is straightforward at the moment. There's lots of work available for our graduates, and we do quite a lot of things to help you in that respect.
Thank you so much, Janet. And it's really exciting to hear that there is that sort of new and emerging pathway, and that there are so many exciting new changes happening in terms of the career opportunities that are available to graduates, and also the fact that there is that support available there to help them get to where they want to go. So thank you for that insight. I do have another question for Antonio and Imogen, and that question is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to prospective students considering the Master of Teaching degree and teaching as a career? So Imogen, I'll start with you.
My advice would be just do it. You're not going to regret it. You may as well just give it a go. If you find it's not for you, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think you should just give it a go. In saying that, if you do decide to do it, don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to get an HD in every subject. It's not about that. It's about learning as much as you possibly can from your lecturers and the people around you and on placement, and learning as much as you can from those teachers, so that you can be the best possible teacher for your future students. I think that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Imogen. And I think that's such a nice sort of takeaway message, to be the best teacher for your students. Obviously, that's sort of what it's all about. And it's fantastic that that's sort of like the forefront of what our graduates and our soon-to-be graduates really want to keep in mind when going into the teaching profession. So thank you so much for that. Antonio, I'll ask you the same question.
Thank you. Yeah, so essentially, give it a go, enjoy it, because you get to have an opportunity to change someone's life or change many people's lives and really impact them. I mean, from my perspective, everyone remembers at least one of their teachers. So that's one thing, I guess, to look forward to. But the piece of advice that I would give, essentially, the things that you learn, everything from inclusive and special education to how to utilize technology in the classroom to lesson plans and lesson sequencing, everything you learn, apply it when you go on placement, because that's the opportunity that you have to ensure that all those skills and all those concepts that you have learned and developed, see if they actually work in your classroom setting with your preferred style of teaching. So the things that you learn, utilize them on your placement. It's really enjoyable. Thank you.
Thanks, Antonio. And Janet, as someone who I'm sure has seen many, many Masters of Teaching graduates walk out the door of Macquarie Uni and into teaching in schools all around the country, I'd love to hear your insight into what advice you have for students considering a Master of Teaching.
I've been working in teacher education for 20 years. It's such a privilege to be able to be involved in shaping the next generation of teaching. It's a passion for me. I love teaching, it's who I am, but I am also aware that the transition to becoming a teacher, particularly for many of you who might be listening who are doing other things at the moment, it is a hard decision, but certainly people work very hard to dissuade me from becoming a teacher. They pointed out all the reasons why I wasn't going to be well paid and it was very hard and so forth. And so there's a lot of pressure not to become a teacher. So I applaud Imogen and Antonio for making the decision to become a teacher, because we all want our children to be taught by good teachers. And I know that our Macquarie graduates are that. So my piece of advice is to if you're thinking about teaching, to look into it, to really follow your dream. The transition can be hard if you're in a current full-time job. I want to reassure you that we can accommodate that easily. We have many students in our Master of Teaching who are working full-time and studying part-time. We have students who are studying full-time and working part-time and everything in between. And we have a course structure and flexibility that allows that to happen. So we can, there is that choice, but also to be aware there are a number of scholarships that are available to help you with that transition. So the New South Wales government has scholarships for in a whole range of areas, particularly mathematics and science related areas. But also if you would like to go and work in regional and remote areas, there's scholarship opportunities and the most incredible work opportunities to think about. So if it's that transition that is holding you back from making that decision, do come and talk to me. I can give you some advice in that respect, because there's so many ways that you can be supported to make that transition from an existing career into your new career. And obviously there's 3 of us sitting here who would just say, yeah, go for it, because we think it's a wonderful career. Thumbs up from Antonio. Yeah. So that's my advice. Explore how to make it possible, because there really are, you know, so many ways that you could be supported to make that transition.
Well, thank you so much, Janet, Antonio, and Imogen for that really informative and inspirational insight. Hopefully it's sort of encouraged and inspired everyone watching today to really pursue that career in teaching. So we'll now open to the Q&A session. So for everyone watching, please keep posting your questions via the Q&A function. We do have a few that have already come in. So this first one I might give to you, Janet. Someone asks, once I complete the Master of Teaching qualification, can I teach in other states and not just in New South Wales?
Yes, that question is a good question. When you complete the Master of Teaching degree, you are accredited by the New South Wales Accrediting Authority, but you can also apply to work in other states in New South Wales. That's simply a paperwork thing. So your degree, your qualifications will be recognised in other states and territories in New South Wales. And similarly, if you wanted to move into other overseas contexts, it's a question of applying within those jurisdictions. And it's a really well recognised teaching degree in international settings. So in essence, yes, the answer is yes.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Our next question that we have asks, I've heard a rumour about primary school teachers teaching year 7 and 8s. Can you comment about that? Janet, would you like to take that one as well?
Certainly. So we do have a Master of Teaching Primary and a Master of Teaching Secondary, and generally speaking, people know whether they want to be a primary and secondary teacher. But what we do know is that there are a number of schools who are looking to primary teachers to work in secondary settings, because there's particular skills around literacy and numeracy in the middle school, and year 7 and 8 and 9 has a lot in common with what's being taught and students learning in years 5 and 6. So you are qualified, you are able to teach. It's up to a principal to make that decision. Similarly, there are a number of secondary teachers who are being employed in primary settings in specialist teaching roles, perhaps as in areas of music or particularly science. For example, Antonio is a science teacher. It might be that a primary school setting might look to that as a way of developing, you know, skills in their teachers and students in science. Generally speaking, primary teachers get employed in primary and secondary teachers get employed in secondary, but they're not exclusive. You're not prevented from working in those other settings. And certainly for casual, there's plenty of primary teachers doing casual in secondary and secondary doing casual in primary. It's about what your degree of comfort, what you're comfortable in doing in offering yourself in those settings.
In terms of working roles, would we always start with casual or relief teaching roles? Would it be too much uncertainty, and how do you deal with that? So maybe I can pass this one on to Imogen and Antonio, both in your own experience and maybe also what you've seen with other people in your cohort, exactly how that's gone and in terms of where people are going after graduation.
Yeah, so Imogen, if you don't mind me starting, is that okay?
No, but my internet cut out, so I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, mine did a little bit as well, actually. There you go. So the question was essentially about, do you start as a casual teacher? The answer to that would be yes. So I was accredited back in May, I believe. And so because I'm still completing my full-time course, I was able to teach casually. So I started out with casual teaching, and to be honest, you probably want to start out with casual teaching, because it allows you to get familiar with a school setting. Obviously, you get familiar during your placements, but being a casual teacher in classrooms and even online now with COVID allows you to really understand how to teach in different environments. So, and how to really manage a classroom, especially when you're on site. So the answer to that would be yes, you start out as a casual teacher, but opportunities are present all over New South Wales. I think Janet could probably agree with that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you can teach while you're finishing off your degree, that's fabulous. It means you get the opportunity to trial things, to implement what you would like to do. It gives you a sense to see a range of different schools, and you're getting paid, which is fantastic. And the pay is generally better than working in lots of other areas such as hospitality and so forth, which are traditional jobs for uni students. So fantastic opportunity. And yes, to then transition once you're fully, finished. Accredited. You've got 5 years to finish off accredited. Yeah, you've got 5 years to get fully accredited and finish off your degree. So quite a lot of people are going part-time and working full-time and finishing off their degree quite slowly, which is fabulous. It's a perfectly good way to complete your Master of Teaching.
Well, thank you so much for that answer. And it really shows that there is so much flexibility and really that practical element as well to be able to work while you're studying, which is really, really fantastic and definitely preferable for a lot of students. So I do have one final question that's been sent in, and it asks, it's a really nice one to finish on. It asks, once you become a teacher, how do you picture your career going forward? So I might start with you, Imogen, and then we can hear from Antonio as well, and I'll let Janet add in as well.
Oh, that is a nice question. Thank you. I think that, yeah, like I was saying earlier, what I would like to do casual for a while. I'm really interested in the pastoral care side of teaching and the welfare and well-being of students and how that impacts their learning. So I would like to, I'd like to learn a lot more about that and develop my understanding of that through, professional development, and also, of course, just through being at different schools and how their pastoral care systems work and the sorts of things that they have in place. So that's something I'm really interested in, that I'd like to go down a little bit more and would like to learn about more. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Watch this space.
Watch this space. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So essentially for me, I see myself continuing as a teacher probably for at least 10, 15 years. The good thing about being a teacher is that, one, obviously you're making a difference, but I mean, 12 weeks of holidays a year is pretty exciting. It looks pretty good. So a side gig or something you could run in that time, or upskill yourself during that as well. I see myself after, I'm not sure where I see myself after that at the moment. So I'll continue as a teacher for now because I really enjoy it. But yeah, well, I guess watch this space like Imogen.
Antonio, I think there's lots of teachers that will disabuse you of the 12 weeks holiday and to tell you about the preparation that they're doing.
Hence the quotation mark.
Perhaps we'll have that conversation in a year's time or so, yeah. And we'll see how much of your holidays you do get. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, it's a fabulous career. You do get to have holidays with, schools. So that's for families and people with caring responsibilities and children. That's that thing. But I think teachers will tell you there's a lot of preparation and marking and so forth that fills in that time. So, but yeah, no, nice ambitions. It's a very flexible career. You can travel, you can take promotional roles, you can focus on pastoral care, you can focus on curriculum. So many opportunities that you can pursue. I expect to see our MTeach students in leadership roles very, very quickly. They bring incredible life skills into their teaching. They have so much to offer students and schools, and so I look forward to meeting with them in their leadership roles in the future.
And with that last question answered, our session comes to an end for this evening. So please join me in again thanking Janet, Antonio and Imogen for their invaluable time and insights into our Master of Teaching program. At the end of the expo, you'll receive detailed information, including our contact details and how to book a one-on-one consultation with an expert to realise your career goals with Macquarie. We look forward to welcoming you to Macquarie University soon. Take care and have a good evening.